Finding things in Oracle documentation. So I have the documentation downloaded and installed onto my notebook. I'm going to double click this and it's all in a browser. And this is what comes up. So there's a lot of things in here, as you can see. Now, for instance, there's 2-day guides which give you a very quick overview of what goes on with different things. I wouldn't go into those too much unless you want to do something like certification. And we've got certain supporting documentation. There are general things that they think that people are going to use on the front page. This is how I like to use the documentation. Again, there's another menu here. It's trying to give you a drill down list, performance, installation, etc, etc, etc. I like to click on this thing here called the master book list. What this gives you is all the books in the Oracle documentation. Now if I want to find out about something, say performance, now bear in mind I actually know a lot about this documentation, so I know where to find things. It finds that, it finds that, it also finds this. This is the primary performance tuning guide, and this gives you everything about performance tuning. There's all sorts of information in there that you don't really want to go into in a course that is an introduction to Oracle. Just showing you the different books. PLSQL language reference, anything to do with writing PLSQL code, PLSQL packages, types and references, anything to do with Oracle provided PLSQL packages such as the DBMS underbar packages. To look at SQL code, specifically, you want to look at the SQL language reference guide to look at things such as views that allow you to look at structures inside the database. Typically, database administrators use this guide. Is the reference guide. The book that you will use mostly in a course like this is going to be the SQL language reference guide, or perhaps to a certain extent the quick reference. I tend not to use the quick reference, it's a little bit too summarized for me. But the plus side for me is I know where to look for things. So I'm going to click on the HTML version of the SQL language reference. I prefer to use the HTML version because I find it more easily searchable and it's much faster. And here's the SQL language reference guide. Now what I don't want to do in chapter 2 in a movie like this is to jump the gun and introduce concepts and phrases and words and reserved stuff in Oracle that you don't know what they are. When writing a book, one is supposed to introduce things and then talk about them afterwards. A bit difficult because I need to show you how to use the book. So there are some very basics here. SQL is essentially a language that reads the database, it reads data. You have functions and expressions, kind of similar mathematically. Operators are things like plus signs and minus signs. There are ways to do those in Oracle. There are certain conditions, queries and subqueries. What I don't like about a lot of this stuff is it's kind of generic, and unless you actually know what to look for, you might find it quite difficult to find things. What I like is this section here. This says all SQL statements in alphabetical order from alter cluster to alter Java, A to A. Down here it's create cluster to create Java. Now if I'm looking for something specific to SQL called the select statement, spelt S-E-L-E-C-T, I can find it between save point S and update U. So I click this link right here, and here I have the select statement, and I get, when I get to it, descriptions and syntax diagrams for the select statement. I will explain all this stuff later on in the course, but what I'm trying to show you now is how and where to find things. You're not going to remember from this movie exactly what to look for, but I'm showing you the general structure. If I want to find an insert statement, which is a statement in Oracle SQL that's used to add new data to tables, I for insert, between D for drop and R for rollback. And here we have the insert statement. Click the link. And if I scroll down through the description information, I get the syntax diagrams. Don't worry about the detail at this stage. Just remember that you're going to mostly need to use the SQL language reference, and when you go into the SQL language reference, you're going to look within this alphabetical list here to find specific statements and clauses that are added to those statements that I'm going to talk about throughout this course. We're not going to go through all the material in this particular course. It's just way too much. Oracle is enormous, as you can see from all this information here. There are so many things in here that you simply can't learn it all at once. It takes years. But don't worry about it. It can be done. I've done it, and many thousands of Oracle DBAs and developers have done before you as well.